Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Curves Welcome Podcast. I'm here with a special guest, Leslie Lindsey Davis, and we're here to chat about discovering you as your very own best friend and how you can love yourself just as you are right now. A little about Leslie. She's published 5, almost 6 books. Her first one being You Can't Eat Love: How Learning to Love Yourself Can Change Your Relationship with Food. This book is in the Amazon Top 20 in at least 2 categories since its release in January. After much reflection and experience, Leslie is on a mission to help others find their why, to go on any journey of self-discovery, introduce them to their very best friend in the whole wide world, learn to love themselves, and live their best life. Welcome, Lindsay. It's great to have you here on Curves Welcome Podcast.
Well, Susie, thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Same here. So like so many people, right? It took a moment of sadness for you to realize something had to change in your life. And you began on a journey to fix what you thought was broken. Can you talk a little bit about that moment that brought you to that journey of self-realization?
Well, it was almost 7 years ago when my oldest son and his wife decided they didn't want me to be a part of their life, which is, a whole nother story. But it was that moment. And what it did was it sent me into what I call a wash, rinse, repeat cycle, because my own mother had died 2 weeks before this child was born. And I had never really grieved her loss. Because, you have a new baby. The rest of my family was totally devastated. They were unable to help me with any of the grief or even the excitement of having a baby. My husband, my now ex-husband's family, they were just excited they had a grandchild. My husband was excited he had a son. So I never dealt with that. So as a consequence, when I hit that moment, like I said, it kind of threw me back 30 something years. I realized I had 2 choices. One, I could continue on the path that I was on, which was heading to a very dark, not helpful place, or I could decide to become healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. Now, what that looked like, I had no clue. I was simply making a decision in that moment. And then the journey began.
Those powerful, pivotal moments in life really do bring you to, well, some people at first might think of it as like a really big obstacle or a block, stopping point in life. But if we're able to view these pivotal moments in our life, oftentimes these really devastating and emotionally draining moments, then if we can face it with that lens of this is life, there are things that are going to happen to us, we have to get through it. And then if we have that kind of idea that there's hope at the other end of everything that we experience in life, life has the ups and downs. It's never going to be that straight line where, you end up on a path of devastation or loss, sadness, and you stay on that forever. And a lot of times it's hard to get past that point when you are in that mode. But it's important to be able to realize that is the ebb and flow of life, and that eventually you are going to see that hope and that sprinkle of joy that comes from that wisdom of being able to experience life, the good and the bad of it.
Well, exactly. And one of the things that I talk about with people all the time is look at the major interstate that's close to you. Look at that major interstate. That thing is not straight. It is not flat. It sometimes, almost doubles back on itself. Now, there are stretches that are really straight and really flat. But if you look at the whole interstate, you'll see that it's got twists, it's got turns, it's got all that kind of stuff to it. And as we're traveling on that sucker, we can run into traffic jams. And I talk about traffic jams in the book. And what I realized is when we run into obstacles, it doesn't make any difference if it's a good obstacle or a bad obstacle. It's still something that kind of knocks us off of our path. If we look at those the same way we look at a traffic jam, What do we do when we hit that traffic jam? Well, the last thing that we do is park our car, get out, and walk home. So if we hit those traffic jams in life the same way and realize, okay, I've hit a traffic jam, it is what it is. What can I do so that I can get through the traffic jam? Can I change the radio? Can I, call a friend? Can I, do something else to entertain myself? What is it that I can do so that I can get through the traffic jam? But I say over and over and over again in my book, don't park your car, do not get out, do not walk home. Because truthfully, when you hit a real life traffic jam on the freeway, is that what you do? No, it isn't.
That is such a powerful analogy. I love analogies, and that is going to stick with me, because how true is that? We hit a traffic jam. We are not going to leave our car. We're not going to get out of our car and just leave it. That just doesn't happen in real life. We face it. We sit there and we're like, we have to face this. We have no other choice. What can I do at this time? If I'm stuck in a 3-hour backup, well, I can call somebody. I can multitask. I can do. I'm parked here. I can't do anything. I'm not driving and texting. So you have to be able to just embrace these moments. It's being proactive is what it sounds like. It's taking these moments in life, these obstacles, these backups on the freeways, and thinking about hitting an obstacle in life is the same thing as that. It's being able to be proactive in how you approach it and realizing that when you hit a moment like that, you have to make a choice even before you hit a moment like that to be proactive with it, so that it doesn't derail you and completely throw you off the path that you deserve to live.
Well, exactly. And one of the things that I started to recognize is I am in control of me. No one else is in control of me. I am not in control of anybody else. So as you said, we are going to hit these moments. So let's make plans. Even if they're not written down, even if they're not in concrete or blood or whatever, let's start thinking about, okay, this around Christmas time, New Year's, what are we doing? And then, you've got end of January, 1st of February, Super Bowl. What is going on right now? Well, you've got parties, you've got family gatherings and things like that. Some people may or may not look forward to those things. Some people may say some of the pieces or parts of those things cause problems for me. Okay, that's fine. Let's just say, all right, these are the traffic jams that I'm encountering. What can I do so that I'm not tempted to park my car, get out, and walk home? How can I handle Great Aunt Sally, who is trying to force food on me? How can I handle Cousin George, who every time he makes some snide comment about my weight, all I want to do is, punch him in the nose and toss him out with the trash? How can I handle these moments? And then we start making a plan. We start practicing. Now, we may not execute perfectly, but we probably execute better than if we would have not practiced. But at the same time, we are not feeling out of control or disempowered. We are feeling in control.
It's having a game plan. That's what it sounds like. You wouldn't dare go into a game like, an NFL player would never go into a game without a plan. A person who runs a marathon would never approach a marathon without a plan to be able to get through it. And so that really should be the recipe for embracing life's curves, because we're going to have them. That's all part of the process and the experience of being alive, is having those curves to face, and having that game plan ahead of time, I think puts a person in the seat of feeling more empowered to be able to make decisions that don't devastate, but actually lift. And that's really important. Now, you describe discovering a myself-sized hole in your heart. What did that realization teach you about feeling broken? Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, I had been looking for love, basically, from everything and everywhere out and everyone outside of myself. And I wasn't getting what it was that I wanted. And so it didn't make any difference where I looked. It always came up short because it never met my expectation. And I always felt kind of cheated. Anyway, the way that I felt, I never felt like it was enough. So when I realized that the only person who wasn't loving me was myself, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. How can I be saying I'm not loving myself? And then I started looking at the way I was speaking to myself. I started looking at the way I was treating myself. I started looking at the way that I was taking care of myself. And I said, holy Toledo, you wouldn't treat or talk or take care of your worst enemy or even a dead cockroach the way that you are treating, talking, or taking care of yourself. And that was huge for me.
Wow. Yes, that is so true. That right there is such a powerful visual for me. I mean, I think all of us are guilty. Many of us have found ourselves in a position where we've talked negatively to ourselves. And then if you really examine what you're saying to yourself, if you really examine that and examine that against maybe how you might talk to another human being, never in my wildest dreams would I ever talk to another human being the way I sometimes talk to myself. Absolutely not. I mean, it's when you set expectations for others, a lot of times you can become disappointed, disenfranchised very, very easily because you cannot control the actions of another person. But when you set the expectations for yourself, the disappointment, if you're following through and you're loving yourself, as you say, if you're loving yourself and you're talking to yourself in a kind voice, then it's hard to get disappointed in yourself when you give yourself the love that you need to be able to thrive. So how would you talk to yourself? You wouldn't talk to yourself like a dead cockroach. That's a really powerful visual, one that I definitely won't forget. But it's a really great way to look at it, and it's a great way to define how. It's a really great way to define how talking negatively to yourself can really affect you, and just affect your path in this life and the journey that you want to take.
Well, and the other thing is. And I realize this, if I'm wanting other people to care for me, care about me, and speak to me in a loving, kind way, if I'm not speaking to myself in a loving, kind way, if I'm not treating myself in a loving, kind way, I'm actually teaching other people how to treat me, because, there is a whole lot of truth to actions speak louder than words. So if someone else is seeing, from the outside, how I'm speaking to myself, how I'm treating myself, well, then they believe that is the way that I want to be spoken to. That is the way that I want to be treated, because I'm not demonstrating anything else. I may be saying to them, you cannot speak to me that way. And then I turn around and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was so stupid that I did X, Y, Z, or, then there turns into this cognitive dissonance. Like, wait a minute, they told me that they didn't want me to do this, but they're doing this. So I guess it's okay. So I need to pay attention to what they're doing and not what they're saying.
Yes, that is so true. Because, I think oftentimes too, we get so used to talking to ourselves in a certain way that when we're around people, we don't realize that those people can actually can see how we're treating ourselves too. And a lot of times we actually talk out loud about ourselves like that. Oh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I said that. And there are other people around that hear you say that. It's not just what you say to yourself in private. It's also what you say to yourself in the company of people. And you're right. How can we expect people to treat us with that respect and that love and that kindness when we're really crapping all over ourselves to them? It's hard to do. The concept of loving yourself. It sounds like in theory, like, oh, yeah, I love myself. Sure. Some people might think that sounds narcissistic. Some people might think, it's over the top. How do you define the whole concept of loving yourself. And why is that so critical, how we approach that?
Well, the realization that I had was I cannot get from the outside what I am not giving myself on the inside. And so loving myself means that I am doing the very best that I possibly can at this moment with the information that I have. And it's that I treat myself and that I speak to myself kindly, and that I forgive myself when I mess up or I make a choice that I might not have really wanted to make. Because, sometimes we get caught up in the moment and we make a choice that had been given, a few more seconds, we might have made a different choice. So I've learned to forgive myself. And people think, well, that's crazy. Why do you need to forgive yourself? Well, you just do, because you want to release yourself from the pain or the discomfort or the whatever of having that conversation. How can you be so stupid? We circle back to that. So by forgiving myself, I say, you know what? I messed up. I forgive myself. And sometimes I'll say, what was really going on that you made the choice at that moment? Other times I say, for example, we go back to the party and, great Aunt Sally and cousin George, and I let them get to me just a little bit. But you know what? I'll leave that party and I'll say, you know what? I am so proud of you. You let them get to you just a little bit, which is so much better than you would have in the past. But you know what? That is so amazing. I am so proud of you. And I forgive you for letting them get to you just a little bit. Because look at you. This is amazing. And celebrate. Which people think that may sound crazy and narcissistic and all that kind of stuff. But if your very best friend in the whole wide world were to tell you something amazing, even if it was just a little something, you would celebrate with them. Okay, your very best friend in the whole wide world is with you all the time, and that is you. So start thinking of yourself as two people and start treating yourself just as you would a physical very best friend in the whole wide world. Celebrate, speak kindly, treat yourself kindly. And yes, you do deserve to treat yourself kindly, which circles around to an oxygen mask, which is another one of my favorite stories.
Yes. Now, you said something that really resonated with me, is the whole forgiving of oneself. That is really important because, a lot of people have a hard time forgiving other people, and they have a hard time forgiving themselves. We all mess up. We're human beings. We will say things that we regret, and we'll go back over it in the middle of the night and think, my gosh, what did I do? I said the wrong thing. I feel so bad, but never really own up to that. And it's hard to, you're in this reel of, I can't forgive myself for that. They must think I'm the worst person in the world. And a lot of times it comes down to basic communication with ourselves and with others. So if, we wronged somebody, own up to it, right? If we've wronged ourselves, own up to it. Just don't resist it and ignore it and push it to the side, because it never goes away fully when you do that. You can put a blanket over it, but you still see that lump in the corner of the room because it's still there. Just take the blanket off, deal with it, own up to it, ask for forgiveness from yourself, from others. And a lot of times, great strides, great results happen from a basic conversation, right? A basic conversation.
Yeah.
And I also love the idea of celebrating. So I'm studying instructional design, which is about how to develop design and facilitate courses. And one of the things that, when you're teaching adults especially, it's really important to give them those points of victory along their learning path. I don't care if it's an hour-long course, a week course, a month-long course, whatever it might be. We all need those victory moments to be able to feel encouraged to move to the next path, to the next point on our journey. And by celebrating ourselves in that respect, by saying, my gosh, I handled that pretty well. I chose the fruit over the laid in junk food, whatever, laid in fat and junk food. I chose the right thing. I chose what was good for me in that moment, that was best for my body. Whatever the victory might be, celebrate it, because it's in those little moments of victory that we reap the greatest rewards, and it keeps us encouraged to move forward.
Well, and the other thing is when we're celebrating the things that we are trying, especially if we're celebrating the things that we're trying to change, what happens is we start creating new habits, because habits are created by repetition. And if you think about it, people, and we are people want to be rewarded for whatever the behavior is. That's why you get the child acting out in the classroom. Why do they keep acting out? Well, the reason they keep acting out is they keep getting a reaction. So, you ask yourself, what is the payoff? What is the payoff? And one of the things that I discovered was when I would go for the bag of barbecue potato chips and the entire container of onion dip, my payoff was after I finished eating all of that, shame would set in. Well, I knew how to deal with shame. I could handle that one because I had been taught from a young age, you should be ashamed, you should feel ashamed, I'm so ashamed you did whatever. So I could deal with that. But I didn't know how to deal with feeling sad or feeling happy, feeling joy. So when we start celebrating the tiny little things, I'm talking about tiny. I don't care if it is that you walked 5 steps further today than you did yesterday, celebrate it. If you parked at the back of the parking lot when you went to the grocery store instead of parking close up to the door, celebrate that. Celebrate these little things, because then you start building habits, and our brain likes to be happy. So when we are celebrating the little tiny things, our brain's like, oh, I like that. Give me some more. And I talk about in the book, we give stars to kindergartners. Okay, why do we do that? Because we want them to continue doing certain behaviors. We're trying to build habits. We're trying to build patterns. You know what? Inside of you, there's a little 4-year-old that's going to do one of 2 things. They're going to be in Walmart. They're going to want the coloring book. And if you don't get it for them, they're going to throw themselves in the middle of the aisle and pitch a temper tantrum until you buy the coloring book for them. Or you're going to be the kind parent who says, you know what? I see that you really want the coloring book, but right now we're not going to get the coloring book. Maybe next week we'll get the coloring book. And I'm so proud of you for not throwing a temper tantrum. And the child says, you know what? I didn't throw a temper tantrum. Next week, we'll get the coloring book. And then they move on. So we do the same thing. We're just tall 4-year-olds.
Yes, tall 4-year-olds. That is so true. Now, Leslie, you have some really remarkable phrases that you share. And one of them that I really love is lose the shoulda, wouldas, couldas. Instead, recognize it was a choice, maybe a not so good choice, but a choice. Keep your power. Don't give it away. Can you talk about what created that? What was the catalyst to that phrase and why it's so powerful for you?
Well, I was having a conversation with 2 of my 3 sisters, and I realized that I should have done this. And if I could have done that, I would have, this would have happened. And after hearing that several times, I was like, wait a minute, that began grating on me. And I started saying, you know what, we need to enter the no should zone. Okay. Because when we start saying that you shoulda or coulda or woulda, then we're imposing somebody else's power onto ourselves. We're giving away our power, because usually when somebody is giving advice, they will say, you should have done X, Y, Z. And we're giving away our power when we agree with them. Okay, now I made a choice. I'm in charge of my life. I'm in charge of my decisions. So I just simply made a choice. It's not a matter of whether I shoulda, coulda, or woulda. I chose to do something. Because if I should have done it, and I could have done it, and I would have done it, something else might have happened. But I realized I am only in control of me. Everybody else is in control of them. So everything that I do and my statements and the way that I speak to myself, and even the way I speak to other people, I try and keep in mind, I'm in control of me. Everybody else is in control of them. So let's say, for example, you were to come to me and you were to say, I'm trying to change this habit, or I'm trying to make a decision about where I'm going to go on my next vacation, instead of saying to you, well, you could have done this, or you should have, contacted this person or whatever, I would simply ask you some questions. Well, I can just imagine how hard this decision is for you. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And then I'm kind of putting it back to you. But at the same time, I catch myself saying, I should have gone ahead and gone to the grocery store instead of, folding the laundry. Wait, hold on. Let's reframe that. Reframe it. I made the choice to fold the laundry instead of going to the grocery store. Now, you see, I've taken my power back.
So reframing is really important. Words are incredibly powerful, and reframing words can be incredibly powerful as well. One example that came to mind, actually this morning, I had an example of this. So every morning I try to exercise. I go downstairs for every 5 days a week. I go and do Insanity and Turbo Fire and all these crazy workouts. And this morning I said to my spouse, okay, I have to go downstairs and do my workout. And then I stopped because I heard myself say it, because I'm trying to get into the habit of saying I get to instead. So I stopped myself and I said, wait, I get to go down to our basement and I get to exercise. And that reframing that powerful statement, it tells me that I am so fortunate that I have 2 legs, 2 arms, a heart, lungs, and I am healthy enough to be able to go down into my basement and exercise instead of I have to. The dreaded word have to. It's so powerful when you can reframe words to make it sound like, to make it feel, not sound, make it feel like I've got the edge and I do have an advantage here. And it encourages, I think, a person to look for the benefits, the blessings that we have in this world.
Well, and also when you say, I get to do that, you're saying to yourself, I get to make this choice. And sometimes if I'm struggling, because there are days when I don't feel like going to the gym or a couple of other things, and I will say, you know what, I am a person who does whatever the heck it is. So that, and I don't put time limits or anything like that on it, because there have been a couple of times when I know that I want to go to the gym, but I really don't want to go to the gym. So I say, I'm a person who goes to the gym. All right. So I get to the gym and I say, all right, I'm a person who is at the gym. I don't put any time frame on it. So on those days, if I'm through in 15 minutes, I'm through in 15 minutes. And I walk out the door and I say, look at you. You are a person who goes to the gym. And I celebrate that. But, you mentioned something, and you mentioned it several times. What a lot of people will argue with, there's the expression, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I so disagree with that. And I've disagreed with that since I was very young and the first time I heard it. Words are the most powerful weapon that we have at our disposal. And they are the most powerful weapon that we use against ourselves. So we need to I choose to be very aware of the words that I speak to myself and to others, because I know that they can do far more damage than any other weapon.
Leslie, what inspired you to write that first book?
I had actually written another book and I couldn't get it published. And one day I was like, well, actually, the first 2 paragraphs I had written a couple of years before, and I picked it up and I kept looking at it and kept looking at it. And I said, you know what? There's another you out there, and they need to hear this story. And I said, oh, nobody wants to hear this story. And it kept circling back around. And once I sat down, the book just fell out. It literally just fell out. And I hope that when people read it, what they realize is it's just me sitting down talking to you. That's all it is. I'm just talking to you. It's the way that I speak. It's the crazy sayings that I have. It's all of that. And I have people who have known me for quite a few years who have read it and they're like, oh my gosh, it's like you're sitting there right next to me having a conversation. But the book just fell out because I realized there was another me out there. Now, it was scary to actually hit publish because I'm very real and I'm very raw and I don't hold anything back.
Yeah, that can be really, really scary to make yourself vulnerable like that, hitting that publish button. By the way, for those listening, this book that I'm referring to is You Can't Eat Love, How Learning to Love Yourself Can Change Your Relationship with Food. That's the first book Leslie wrote. And you've written 5 others, correct? And
yes.
You have one soon to be out?
Yes, one soon to be out. It's Zombie Siege. The other books are nothing in this vein.
Okay, so for all the intents for this podcast, we're talking about the self-help.
You Can't Eat Love. Yes,
exactly. Yes. Leslie, is there anything else that we haven't talked about right now on this topic that you want listeners to take away from this conversation?
The main thing is, you know, whether you believe it or not, you are enough just as you are. You have everything inside of you that you need. You can love yourself just as you are and start where you are, except, you know, today, this is where I am. Tomorrow, I'm going to be someplace else. But right now, you are enough. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You just simply are enough as you are right now. And I tell people, if you can't believe that for yourself, I will believe it for you until you are able to believe it for yourself.
How can listeners connect with you?
The easiest way is to go to my website, which is youcan'teatlove.com. And my email is leslie@youcan'teatlove.com. And there's a place on the website where you can click and, you know, send an email directly to me. And I would love to hear from you. I've had people say, oh, you're a real person. Yes, I'm very real and I will answer you.
That's great. This conversation has been wonderful. I have so much to take away from it. And the biggest takeaway for me, and I hope for people listening, is how you speak to yourself. The words you use are very powerful, and make those words powerful, the ones you speak to yourself. That was my biggest takeaway. I want to thank you so much for being here with us today, Leslie.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Susie. I have so enjoyed it.
Hey, friends. Thanks for spending time with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. If there is something you'd enjoy exploring in a future podcast, please reach out to me via my website at curveswelcome.com and I'll work it in. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, go out there and continue to learn, grow, and embrace life's curves.